Hello, hello. Welcome, leaders. So we are actually, it's right on time. I was going to say we're about a minute early, but it's right on time. I see several of you online already. Let's see, I can see YouTube. Just a quick heads up and housekeeping. If you comment on YouTube, I can see your comments. If you comment on LinkedIn, I can see your comments. If you're watching this anywhere else, I can't actually see your comments in real time. So if I don't address a question, it is not that I'm ignoring you, it's that you're in a destination where I can't actually view your comments in real time. So just letting you know that's what's happening. And if you are looking for career-stopping myths that are keeping you stuck, you are in the right place. And I am Bribiesca-Hedin, and I'll be leading today's session. And I'm very excited to be here with you. So please do me a quick favor, wherever you are watching, go ahead and drop me a quick note to let me know that you are there. Drop me a quick note and let me know that you are there, that you can see me. You can let us know where you're joining from. If it's raining, kind of nonstop like it is out here in the Los Angeles area. But I would definitely love to hear from you. Let's see if your comments are coming through. I'm going to give it just a moment. And while we're doing that, oh, you are. Okay, they're coming through. There was just a slight delay. They are coming through. Excellent, excellent. Okay, thank you guys. Okay, there are a lot of you, so I might not be able to shout out everybody. But Brett, hey, I'm so glad you're here. Heather, let's see. Is it Hikem? Candy, Lisa, Sean, let's see. Mitra, Elaine, Heather. So happy to see all of you here. I know there are more comments coming in, and I will keep my eyes on that. Christina, so good to see you. So welcome everyone, wherever you're joining from. You're in the right place today. I wanted to have this conversation. You guys, not all of you might know me, and so obviously I was about to dive in and just start talking about things, but let's do this. I'm going to go ahead and give you a brief introduction. In the event this is the first time we're in some sort of space together, whether it's a virtual space or in real life, and we've never had a chance to meet, let me just tell you a little bit about who I am. So my name is Bribiesca-Hedin, and what I do today is I help accomplished professionals become influential leaders, but I have a very specific approach to doing that because I think there are a lot of ways to become a leader. There are a lot of ways to even become effective at what you do. But one of the questions I like to ask is at what cost? So my goal and my entire purpose and what I love to do is to provide leadership coaching and training for groups and individuals, specifically to become that influential, effective, successful leader without overworking, without people pleasing, and without selling your soul, right? Because once you've sold out, what else is there? So again, very specific about how we do that and how we don't do that. Now, my background is in management consulting. So I started a long time ago with one of the big four with Ernst & Young, right out of business school, where I went to USC. And, even back then, I can remember noticing that there were some, as I started in Ernst & Young, got one of those prized internships, I noticed there were some senior leaders and partners at the time who had incredible results, but it was like pulling teeth to get people to work with them. There were senior leaders who people would flock and were in a line literally to get on their engagements. Like they would like sit on what we used to call on the beach, and I think today we call it on the bench, right? And not take another engagement because they're waiting to get a spot on that leader's team. And, throughout really my life, even before I went to and was a management consultant, went to business school, I would notice these distinctions, and I was always really curious about why that happened. Of course, there's always all of us have the opportunity to be a jerk, to get it wrong, to knock it out of the park, all of those things. And I'm always fascinated at what it is that makes the difference. So that started my journey in focusing on leadership psychology, and distinguishing what actually moves the needle of success in such a way that allows the leader to show up powerfully, as opposed to all the other ways, which we'll talk about some of those as we go. But you guys know what I mean. If you've ever had the occasion of working for a leader who doesn't necessarily inspire the best from you. And we're going to talk about that, as I say, as well. So today we're talking about career-stopping myths. And I love talking about myths because I find that even the most accomplished professionals and at every level of an organization succumb to myths that trip them up and really stall their ability to lead, their ability to align teams, their ability to make an impact, and their ability to really deliver on the promise of whatever that intention or project or initiative or client had in mind. You guys with me? So a lot of us get started on these journeys and these projects, and somehow at the end we might not quite see the results of all of our hard work come to fruition. So what we want to do is be sure that you are seeing the results that you intended. And we do that in a couple of ways, by making sure you're focusing on what you control versus angsting on all the rest, which we're naturally drawn to focus on all the nonsense out there and everything that's not working, and the traffic and all those things. And we spend far less time than we should where we can actually make a difference and move the needle. So let's talk about that, because even when you're focusing on all the right things, if you're being driven by, biases, and I don't mean biases in terms of, DEI, although I love talking about that too. I'm talking about biases in terms of the way that our brains automatically default, and the natural preferences that we have for one way of thinking, approach, or perspective that precludes the ability for us to see and recognize, right, the folly in those or the opportunity in another way of thinking. So we all have those. I call them thought errors, because I think that that's pretty clearly what they are. But I also refer to them as myths, which I think probably you can all relate to. And so let's break some of those down. I think, I hope this will be very helpful for all of you, my sharing some of my experience, what I'm seeing with my clients, and what I see out there, whether we're talking about enterprise transformation, whether we're talking about personal transformation, whether we're talking about team transformation. But anywhere where you want to see a different result, oftentimes those myths get in the way, right? So we're going to talk about that. And yes, Doreen, confirmation bias is definitely one of them. And confirmation bias, for those of you who are curious, since we mentioned it, is simply only looking for sources and opportunities to engage that confirm your pre-existing thinking, right? So again, not to launch into a political discussion, but depending on your thinking and the kind of thinking you're willing to engage with, you might only watch CNN, and or you might only watch Fox, or you might decide you're not going to watch either, right? But I think you guys know what I mean in that sense. You go to the source or the opportunity or the person who's going to confirm what you already thought. And the reason that we often do that, I'm going a little off what we're talking about, but I want you to kind of see this in yourself, is because our brains don't like friction. And we naturally, are drawn to what aligns with what we already believe, even if it's wrong, right? And so much so our brains don't like friction that's where we will kind of twist things around in our heads to unexplain something that we've seen, right? So I won't get any farther into that, but you can probably see where that applies, where you have people who can't be wrong even when they're wrong, and their brains will find a way to explain away the wrongness, if you want to think about it that way. So I'm going to bring up slides. While I'm doing that, I want you to just drop in the chat. We're going to go super, super, super fast because I have a lot to cover and I really want to leave time for questions. So in the chat, drop a quick note. What are you hoping to get out of today's session? What are you hoping to get out of today's session? I know a lot of you have been in previous sessions. And so I guess what kind of tweak or up level or what are you looking for out of today's session? I'm going to get this started and we will go from here. And once the slides come up, just give me a quick thumbs up and let me know that you can see them as well. Let's see. Yeah, let's present. Share screen. Sorry, you guys, clearly I'm talking to myself because I want to make sure that I get to where we're trying to get and you guys can see what you need to see. Okay. Looks like we're good to go. You can see my slides. Let me move these off to the side a little bit so I can see you and all of your comments. Okay, let's go. So again, career-stopping myths that are keeping you stuck. And I see some of your comments here. Let's see. Michelle, helping to get strategies to get unstuck. How many of you does that apply to? And definitely use the reactions, raise your hands, thumbs up, all those things, and support one another. One thing I like to remind the leaders in my programs is that you're all brilliant, especially when it's about someone else. So you guys ever notice that you are fantastic at providing really clear and insightful perspective and advice when it's for a loved one, right? Or a friend or a colleague, but when our brains get caught up in the, am I getting it right? What are people going to think? How's this going to look? We get slightly less brilliant. So definitely look to each other, share contacts, connect with the other folks here who obviously are like-minded and looking to become more effective leaders, have more effective careers, all those things. Look to each other and support each other in the chat as well. Let's see, strategies to switch employers to move toward a passion job. I'm going to share some of these. Release of fear, moving upward. Yes. And you guys definitely thumbs up, comment if these sound like you. Again, we said strategies to get unstuck. Strategies to help me not feel stuck. Well, this is really, yeah, this is the thing. Well, of course, I use the word stuck. So, of course, all of you are as well. Learn some things where I may be the one limiting me. Yeah. And Brett, I love that you said that because I find I was doing an exercise a few weeks ago when I was away at a business retreat, and we were really articulating our best clients, right? I'm the CEO of my company and I'm articulating our best clients. It doesn't mean that they're, perfect people and that we don't love everyone equally, but there's some people that seem to get the greatest outcome and seem to just bring a wonderful vibe, especially when we're in a group. And those are the people who walk in thinking, I'm going to bet that I am both the problem and the solution. And so I love that you said that, Brett. And see, challenging my own assumptions. Yes, exactly, Christina. Kind of same line I was just talking about. Overcoming imposter syndrome. I'll see how much we can get into that here. But, we're going to touch on that. How to speak to my leader. Thanks, Victoria. Ooh, how to be a change agent. That's how I'm summarizing what you're saying, Heather. Learning how to win people over to my good ideas. Yes. Yeah, no one likes change, so my success hinges on how well I'm influencing my colleagues, and we're going to talk about that a little bit. Let's see. How to learn I can't please everyone as a leader. Okay, so we're not going to be able to do all of them because I'm trying to end by one. I'm glad to stay over for questions, but I want to make sure you get every ounce of value and of the content that we have created. So you can definitely keep dropping those in there. And you guys know I have tons of other free training and recordings you can watch on LinkedIn, on YouTube. So take advantage of those as well. And of course, at the end, for those of you, some of you are here and already know you want probably more than what we're going to do in this conversation. And you'll find out how to get more and how to do that, how to work with me, all those good things as well at the end. So definitely stick around for that. But let's get started. There we go. So here are the objectives for today. They're pretty straightforward. I want to uncover the top myths that are blocking your professional results, understand and change what's driving your decisions. So that's supposed to be so you can be more strategic and know where to start to create quick wins. Very straightforward. Know where to start to create quick wins. Let me remove that. Now, I'm going to introduce this leadership framework because you're going to see as we go where some of these fit in. I'm going through it very quickly, but I want you to understand as we go how there's this kind of big roadmap or path to becoming an influential, effective leader, being more true to yourself versus the alternative of selling out. And that is everything that's folded into the intentional leadership framework. I've super simplified it. So a lot of you have seen this before. It's going to look different. And that's because I'm trying to up level my game and keep it super simple as well for conversation's sake. But there's a tremendous amount behind this. And the folks in my program now kind of understand what that means. So first of all, we start with self-mastery. Everything starts with where you are, which is why I made the reference a moment ago to my best clients being folks who walk in thinking I'm probably both the problem and the solution, because that is 100% correct. Everything starts with self-mastery. And I just highlighted a few pieces that fall into the space of self-mastery, because self-mastery is about knowing yourself, right? And that's what you get out of self-mastery. That's understanding your values. Everything starts with values, and people cringe when they hear me say that, when they hear other, people say that. But you need to understand everything starts with values. And the reason that that's so important is because oftentimes when we're stuck, it's a result of conflicting values that we're not aware of, right? So that's one. Oftentimes we have blind spots to where our values are limiting our ability to engage and impact and influence other people. And I don't mean that you need to bend or adjust your values. I mean that you need to be aware of how they're being expressed, because they're not always expressed in a way that is worthy of that value, or that's even intentional, right? Because we do this automatically, such as being incredibly reactivated and upset when somebody shows up to a meeting 5 minutes late. Because your values have it that you honor other people's time. And of course you honor other people's time, but stop and think about it for a second. That person may not have that value top of mind at the moment. They may have just come off of, being completely engrossed in working on a problem that's of the utmost importance to the organization or the team, just wanted to get the last couple of words down before running into this next meeting. So they might have a value of being with that solution orientation and staying with that just another minute longer to make sure they don't lose that thought. But again, if the assumption is that if they're late, they don't value your time or how you engage is going to be very different. So I just wanted to throw in that quick example because I want you to see how even a simple value like honor other people's time can actually be a showstopper and negatively impact who you are and how you show up as a leader. So everything starts with values, because that's where most of our blind spots live there, and our leadership default, which again is where we unpack more blind spots in my program. Self-confidence, we spend a lot of time on because we want to make sure that you're not making decisions out of a reaction to having low self-confidence. And I'm not talking about confidence in this session, but I want you to understand that that's kind of where that lives, in that space of self-mastery. It's the values, the intentions, meaning the true intentions behind what you're doing versus the pretend intentions you'd like other people to believe you have. Kind of like asking a question in the meeting to show somebody up, but pretending you're doing it to further the conversation, right? You guys can, while you might not see this in yourself, you might recognize it in other people, right? Does that sound familiar? Somebody speaking, pretending that they're trying to add to the conversation or contribute, but really sometimes they just want to hear themselves talk. They just want to have the last word. It's, that kind of thing. The next one is role mastery. This is where you enacted priorities. I'm going to touch on this because it sounds so not sexy, but enacted priorities, what that means is that you understand what's actually important to your organization and that you're refocusing your time and effort to actually align with that. This sounds very simple, but it's incredibly challenging, because what you'll find if you look around your organization is that they have a set of values listed on posters somewhere in the break room, the intranet, wherever, at the quarterly meetings, and they don't always align with who's getting promoted or the decisions they're making. Does that sound familiar? Give me a quick thumbs up or hand raise if that sounds familiar. So that probably sounds familiar to most of us, and it's not that anybody's trying to mislead anybody else. It's that oftentimes organizations say they have values, but they're aspirational, whereas the real values, right, are living somewhere else. And so in the program, we actually teach you how to distinguish those so that you can focus your time and attention where it makes sense. An influence plan. This is so important. An influence plan, the bottom line is it just helps you understand who needs to catch you winning, doing what. Okay, that's the bottom line. A lot goes into that, many folds and many activities, and a lot of reflection and planning goes into that, but it's incredibly powerful. Success levers, just understanding, again, those broad categories and areas where you can redirect your attention when your investment in one area is not giving you the kind of return that you'd expected. It's funny because we actually have a tendency to do the opposite. When something is not giving us the return we expected, we don't actually stop and assess what's happening. We either decide to throw more at it, right? And we're like, well, I'm going to double down. Or we decide to do 10 other things, like, well, I'm just going to throw spaghetti at the wall and see what works and see what sticks. But I need to tell you, the only thing that comes from throwing more spaghetti at the wall is a dirtier wall. And so I want you to think of that as it relates to your career as well. That in this space of role mastery, the intention is to know your role. That's either your current role or your next role, and to understand what actually moves the needle of success in that space, right? Or to get you to that next level. And finally, there's goal mastery. And this is really leadership goal mastery is another way I refer to this. But this is where you get really clear on your intentional leadership style. You're able to articulate at the drop of the hat who you are as a leader. You have a strategic plan for your career, but I don't just mean you know where you're trying to go, but I mean you have a strategic plan that's well articulated and clear, and that actually informs what you do and how you invest your time, not only monthly, but weekly and daily. It actually informs how you invest your time in the activities that you take on. So it's an actual living, breathing strategic plan. Everyone needs to have one. We're going to talk about that as well. Obstacle management. I like to say, only somewhat facetiously, that only 10% of the time do things go according to plan. So I want you to ask yourself what you're going to do the other 90% of the time. And that's where obstacle management comes in, is distinguishing what those obstacles are, how you're going to address them, and incorporating that into your plan. So there's so much more I can say about this, but I just wanted to give you that quick overview. This is sequential because everything starts with self-mastery. Otherwise, it just becomes you going through a list, right? You being performative and being like, well, just tell me the things to say and how to stand and what to wear, and then I'll be an effective leader. And yet we all know leaders who do exactly that on the surface, and yet given an opportunity, we probably wouldn't continue to work with them. And that's unfortunate, right? Because they might have a lot to offer, but they got stuck somewhere back there in self-mastery. So I'm going to keep going because I want to distinguish, those myths, right? Those thought errors that might be keeping you and others from having the kind of results that you're looking for. And so I'm going to start with the first one. I'm not a leader. I'm going to go really quickly, but I want you to be really clear, and I want you to take this definition with you. A leader is someone who inspires the best from themselves and others toward a common goal, period. You guys with me? It has nothing to do with your title or your level or your span of control or your budget or decision authority. It has nothing to do with any of those things. So from this day forward, I want you to walk away with that understanding of what a leader is. So now I'm going to ask you, and you go ahead and answer in the chat. Are you a leader? Go ahead and answer in the chat. I want to see every single person watching this whether it's in real time or you're watching the replay later on today or tomorrow, are you a leader? And I want you to go ahead and answer the chat. I'm a leader, or yes, whatever the case is. Are you a leader? If you're someone who inspires the best from yourself and others toward a common goal, you are a leader. What this means is that if you're being intentional, 100% of you are leaders. So I don't ever want you to say, I'm not a leader again. You guys with me? Like literally never again. Okay, so now that's done. You're already a leader, and you know this, and you own this, and you help your team members own this. They are leaders. I don't care if they're entry-level interns. If they are bringing their best to help move the team toward a common goal, they are leaders. And you need to consider and treat them as such, just as you consider and treat yourself in the same way. So I'm going to keep going. Myth. Oh, I love this one. My company is responsible for my professional development. Who has thought that? Who has thought that? Who has said something like, well, they don't have a career, like they haven't set up career ladders. They don't have a career path for me. They don't have money to invest in professional development. They don't send me to the courses I want to go to. My boss doesn't tell me what I should be working on. Now, look, all of those things are wonderful, and it's fantastic when those things are in place. Yes, it's fantastic when your organization has it all figured out. But if you're only going to have a fantastic career and impact and leave a legacy and make fantastic things happen, when everything is taken care of, that's supposed to be taken care of, your opportunity to make an impact is going to be severely limited. Yes, it's the organization's responsibility to have those things managed if they want to keep their best talent. Yes, it's their responsibility. And it's your responsibility to distinguish what you're going to do if they don't have it managed. Are you just going to kind of hang out, wait and see what happens? You know, what the next, pandemic, economic downturn, reorg brings about? It is not their responsibility. It is one of many things that a good organization should provide, but many don't. And so is that what you want to have your career and results and leadership effectiveness and team output and growth be hinging on? No. Relinquishing authority, strategy, and decision-making in your career to your boss, your organization, the training budget, or an established career ladder is a fatal flaw. It is absolutely a fatal flaw. I want you guys to understand that. Stop, definitely let your boss know you're looking for the next thing. Let your board know that you want to develop in these ways or help them develop in a certain way, whatever the case is. But I want you to understand that it is not in their hands. See, I talk a lot about being the CEO or chief strategist or decision maker in your career. It is incredibly imperative that you understand your role. No one has more agency in your life or your career than you do. You guys with me? No one. No one has more agency than you do. So you are the chief strategist in your career. You are the chief strategist in your professional development. You are the chief strategist and decision maker for your impact. No one else. You cannot outsource that to someone else. That is you and only you. Because the alternative is to be along for the ride for whatever else comes next. Again, waiting to see where that next reorg lands, whether your next boss is better than the last one. And as a leader, at whatever level you are, that is ineffective. It doesn't work. And it sets you up to be frustrated and disheartened and disempowered, not to mention the impact it has on your team. You guys with me? When you're just waiting around to react to the next thing that kind of shows up, as opposed to being the one distinguishing the direction that you're going. Because the only thing more important than knowing where you fit in your organization's strategic plan is knowing where they fit into yours. You guys with me? That is it. The only thing more important than knowing where you fit in your organization's strategic plan is knowing where they fit into yours. Please write that down. Please write it down. If you don't know where you fit in your organization's strategic plan, definitely spend some time figuring that out. Again, go on your intranet, look at your last, quarterly meeting update, look at the last strategic plan progress report. You need to understand what's important to your organization. But even beyond that and paramount to that is you need to understand where that organization, that plan fits into yours and whether it fits. Because otherwise, this is how you end up in a career where 10 years down the line, you don't understand how you got there. Like you were on a great path, but your organization started to veer towards a different direction. And before you knew it, you stayed on that bus when you should have taken a transfer and gotten on a different one a long time ago. Now you're at a destination you don't recognize, doing work you didn't sign on for, with no chance of having the impact that you'd intended. So spend some time getting really clear on where your organization is going and whether that's what you want for yourself, right? And if not, what do you want for yourself? So you're responsible for your plan, for your growth, for investing your time and treasure in your development. You guys with me? Okay. Next myth is goal setting. This one I'm going to go through very quickly, but I want you to understand that goal setting is not enough, right? People think goal setting is key. SMART goals. We got this. But let's talk about what actually happens. Here's what we know about goal achievement, right? We know that if you say you're going to do something, you don't set a date, the likelihood of you doing it is about 4%. Right? This is the land of like New Year's resolutions. This is the land of New Year's resolutions. If you specify a date, that's a pretty great increase. Don't you guys agree? Like it jumps tenfold up to about 46%. If you share your goal with someone else, you say, hey, I'm doing this over the next 3 months, it jumps to 65%. But something magical happens when you not only have done those things, you have a date, you share the goal, but you actually have ongoing progress meetings with someone to let you know how it's going. The likelihood of success and of you achieving that goal jumps to 95%. Now, I don't know about you, but I want a 95% success rate. I want a 95% success rate. So I want you to keep that in mind, right? Goals are not enough. So where I want you to, not clicking. Let's see if, there we go. So a strategic plan and accountability partnership is actually what's central and critical success factor to seeing the kind of progress that you want to see when you set those goals. A strategic plan that articulates how you're going to get there and also how you're not going to get there, right? What decisions you've decided to forego, as well as accountability partnership. That mechanism that keeps you focused on how much progress did I make since last time? How much progress did I make since last time? And I see some of your comments here. I know from this last section, we were talking about having responsibility for our careers. And we're still pretty much on that topic because we're talking about that strategic plan. But I love this. Thank you, Randy. That's why I'm here. Discovered the org no longer fits into my strategic plan. Amen. Let me tell you, I know it can sound frustrating and scary to discover that, but wouldn't it be more frustrating and more scary to not discover it? And to wonder then why it feels like you're pushing this monumental boulder uphill and you're not seeing the results that you hoped for. Why you seem to be knocking it out of the park, but nobody seems to care. Like you're not getting the rewards you expected from all of the effort, all of the output, all of the hard work, and even the sacrifices that you've made. So a strategic plan, so incredibly important. And again, that accountability partnership. Oh, let me go back up. Oh, we'll get to this one in a moment, but hold on. Let's see what's going on here. So I'm actually not going to, we're not going to touch on that one. Well, we'll come back to those at the end. I just need to do a good job. And I know I've seen, like a couple of years ago, this was one of the myths I also broke down here on LinkedIn, and I've seen the conversation come up more and more over the last couple of years. And I'm so glad to see that. I'm so glad. Like, we need to know that it's not just about doing a good job, because what people end up doing when they believe that doing a good job is going to get them the results that they want is, well, you guys can probably share in the chat, but they work nights, they work weekends, right? To try to continue to say yes to all, because they think that all they need to do is do a good job. All I need to do is prove myself. And then that gets to, all I need to do is prove myself again, until again, 10 years later, 2 or 3 promotions lost. You're thinking, well, how long do I have to keep proving myself? I just need to do a good job is a myth. I just need to do a good job is a myth. So I like trees, and there are these beautiful award-winning apples right on the screen. And a farmer planted these many years ago. But when she went to grab the plants and put them in the ground, she actually thought they were orange trees. It was just a mistake that was made. She put them in the ground. The apples turned out to be absolutely magnificent. And like I said, award-winning. The challenge is that farmer, she will never recognize that those apples were award-winning. She will never recognize their excellence, their brilliance, how amazing they are, because she just cannot see beyond her own mistake. And I bring this up because, a couple of reasons. But for one, not everyone is trying to catch you winning or willing to catch you winning. You guys with me? Not everyone is willing to catch you winning. So see, when you say that your career success is just dependent on doing a good job, a huge assumption goes along with that. And that is an assumption that the people who need to catch you winning are willing to catch you winning. But that's often not the case. And you know how you know this? Because you can look back at how many times you've knocked it out of the park, and it seems to mean nothing to anyone but you. Does that sound familiar? So going back to the apple tree, I want you to think about this part again, just, going back to the apple tree. When the apple tree doesn't get the recognition from the farmer and knows that the farmer is actually a bit cranky every time she walks by, the orchard, does the apple tree then try to change itself into an orange tree to be to the farmer's liking? No. The apple tree just owns its excellence. The farmer's perspective is irrelevant. You guys with me? The farmer's perspective is irrelevant because the farmer isn't necessarily trying to catch that tree winning. So the fatal flaw here is depending on others' validation and agreement that you did a good job. Again, do a good job, because I hope it goes without saying that we should always be trying to knock it out of the park. Why? Because there's something in it for us in just knowing what we're capable of. You guys see that? Knowing what you're capable of is enough to have you want to aspire to more. Like, it's fun. It's a challenge. It's a level of motivation that's positive and inspired, even if you didn't, hit the mark. But trying to do it for somebody else's validation is a recipe for folly. It's just a recipe for failure. So what I invite you to do and consider is purpose over praise. It's very straightforward. And I'm going to talk more about that in a moment, but I really want you to pull that to you. Because the reality is that it's critical that you choose the right driver for your decisions and actions. Doing a good job, getting the gold sticker, getting the atta girl, getting the acknowledgement and the recognition that, frankly, maybe you did deserve, or you definitely deserved, but it may not come. So you need better drivers than somebody else's approval. So I want to introduce you to the decision driver journey. I just simplified this a bit for this conversation, and I think I like this, so you guys can let me know. But this is a model I created a few years ago to help understand why people do things that don't always make sense. Like, have you ever watched somebody do something that you think, why in the world did they do that? That is completely counterproductive. It goes against everything they said that they wanted to do and that next progress they wanted to see, right? And like, you can't make sense of it. So we can see it in other people, but we can't always see it in ourselves. Kind of like somebody saying, I want to get recognized for my great ideas. But then you don't share your ideas because you're afraid somebody's going to steal them. Right? You see how decision drivers kind of get in the way there. So I'm going to start at the bottom. So this is where what I call the concerned citizen. And the concerned citizen is usually where you end up after an extended period in a relatively negative environment, maybe starting to internalize some criticism you've received from others, or extended periods of trying to people please and not being successful at it. Okay. The concerned citizen is making decisions out of fear and survival. But here's what I want you to consider, and to look in your own life and your own results, and consider, when is the last time you made a decision out of fear that actually had you feel more safe? Right? When is the last time you made a decision out of fear that actually had you feel more safe? Because what I have found is actually counterintuitive, and that is that when you make a decision out of fear, not only do you not feel more safe, but you actually start to more finely tune into everything else that might possibly go wrong. So that decision made to have you feel safe actually makes you feel less safe after the fact and more at risk. Because all you're trying to do here is limit losing any more than you already have, right? And staying out of the crosshairs of whatever you think is putting you at risk, whether it's getting the answer wrong, or somebody saying no, or feeling bad because of a failure, being judged, whatever the case is. But making decisions out of fear does not actually have you feel more safe. So I want you to hold on to that and notice where that's a decision driver for you. Now, the next one is the self-conscious careerist. Now, the self-conscious careerist, this is probably the closest we have to a default. And our driver here is really, it's ego and looking good. It's ego and looking good. So this is where we have to have the last word. We need to have the best shoes. We need to never be embarrassed and always say the right thing. Otherwise, we won't say anything at all. We want to one up the next person, right? Because if we're not at the top of the list, we're embarrassed. And what are people going to think? And here's something I want to say about this, because you heard me make a mention a moment ago, right? You heard me make a mention just a moment ago about accomplishment, and you should be trying to accomplish big things because it helps you expand. There's so many good things about that, so I won't go over those. However, I want you to understand the distinction when you're going after big things because they're worthy of you pursuing them, versus when you're going after big things and the prizes or that goal to prove that you're worthy of having accomplished it. There is a significant difference between those two. And when you are making decisions to prove your worth, that's when you know you've fallen into this trap, right? You think you're making decisions to win, but what you're doing is making decisions to feed your ego. And where this really falls apart for you is when things don't go according to plan. This is when people show up and we think, that person's a monster to work with, or they have a horrible attitude. Like, yeah, they get certain results, but they're just terrible. They leave a wake of bodies in their path. This is where that lives. Where there's not a mechanism driving your decisions beyond getting it right. Right? Getting it right is just, it's a booby prize if you want to think about it that way. Like perfection. It's a booby prize. Now, of course, we want to be accurate. Of course, we want to get it right. But there needs to be a bigger intention than getting it right. You guys with me? So the last one is the career CEO or chief strategist level. And of course, this is where I want us all to be all the time. This is when you're making decisions out of a drive towards strategy, and you're not making decisions being reactive. So let me see. So I'm looking back at your comments. Sorry, I'm getting distracted because I'm trying to go back to your comments. I love what some of you guys are sharing. And actually what Ida shared, start with an agreement with God and purpose. That might be your purpose. So I'm going to share a quick example. I'm sorry, my phone keeps dinging here. So let me see if I can stop it. So here is what I want you to understand. And this, I feel like this client story really enlivens this. She actually was in a place where she's down here, right? Concerned citizen. I don't know if you can see that. And making decisions out of fear and stressed out, having a horrible time at work. And she says, I'm afraid to speak up. I'm afraid to engage. I'm afraid to try anything. Like my boss is just can't seem to see anything good that I do. There's always something critical. I'm like, okay. And she's just afraid of failing. I'm like, all right, well, where are you not afraid of failing? And she said, oh, well, yeah, in my hobby, people say no like 99 out of 100 times, and it doesn't impact me. And I was like, oh, okay. I thought that was kind of curious and interesting. I'm like, well, what kind of hobby is that? She's like, oh, well, I volunteer to teach people about the Bible, and most people don't want to hear about it or will close the door in my face, but it doesn't actually mean anything to me. I just go on to the next person, and there's no loss of like enthusiasm and joy or intention or anything else like that. And I'm like, yes, that is it. Now, of course, her purpose, right, just because of the comment that Ida made was tied back to her faith and her religion. But I just want you to see how when the purpose is bigger than getting it right or people saying yes or no, we're really relatively unaffected by anybody else's reaction because we know what we're there for. We know what we're there for. So this is where I invite you. Now, your purpose may have nothing to do with sharing the Bible. It may not have nothing to do with, for example, I worked for a cancer center for many, many years with curing cancer or bringing clean drinking water. Your purpose or bigger intention for all intents and purposes might simply be to get to the end of this miserable project so you could add it to your LinkedIn and get out. Are you guys with me? Your purpose can be that tactical and doesn't have to be something out there and elusive, but it has to be bigger than getting the last word and looking good and getting it right. Because none of those things will survive the 90% of the time when things don't go according to plan. So I want to hear from you guys. Can you see yourselves in this? Can you see where there's some situations where you show up here as a chief strategist, making decisions driven by intention, an intention bigger than being embarrassed by not getting the answer you want? And then can you see where there are places where you're making decisions out of fear and survival and what people might think and how you don't want to be uncomfortable if you don't get it right or if you don't get picked or all those things? I want you to notice. Because if you're like most humans, there's still areas where you're making decisions down here. And this is where you're being reactive. What you want to do is have nearly all of your decisions live up here, where you're being strategic. And all that we talk about my program is aimed at having you be strategic. And the reason I say that is because a strategist focuses on what they control, moving towards that bigger intention. That's what a strategist focuses on. A strategist doesn't try to find a way to reply and react, to every foolish thing that someone or something in the environment sparked, right? The person didn't do what they said they were going to do. Instead of getting reactivated by, oh, they don't respect me, they don't do what they say they're going to do, and I'm so upset, and why don't they respect me, and blah, 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 you would be thinking about instead what needs to happen, number one, to get the thing done that needed to get done, and number two, to have the right conversations to distinguish what is in the way, what obstacles need to be removed for that person to do a better job. You guys with me? So I'm going to continue. I know that was a lot. But I want you to see yourself here. This is so incredibly important. So now, yeah, I love this, Michelle. We can all see it so clearly for everybody else, right? You guys, a quick hand raise or a yes in the chat. Type clearly in the chat if you can see it really clearly for other people. Like you can constantly catch people making decisions from the wrong driver. And it's like so apparent that there's something going on. By the way, that's a very effective model to bring when you want to understand what's prompting other people's actions that don't seem to make sense, and what's prompting how they're showing up that seems to be counterintuitive. So absolutely. I love that. I'm the apple tree in the orange orchard. Yes, my farmer has no idea what they have. Absolutely. Have you guys seen that video of the concert violinist playing in the subway station? And people are just walking by and completely ignoring him. And then the next night he was playing at the concert hall where people were paying hundreds of dollars a seat to watch him play. But people simply didn't know what they had. They simply didn't know what they had. So let's keep going. So where do you start? This is where I want to take you. I'm giving you this quick self-assessment. So I want you guys, this is go really fast because I want to start answering questions right at the top of the hour for anyone who wants to stay. I want you to answer these questions. I'm going to read them to you, and you don't have to out yourself in the chat, but I do want you to write down the answers or take a screenshot and answer them later. 1 to 10, 10 being best. Like, how true are these? I never react to other people's nonsense. Number 2, I have self-confidence no matter who's in the room and what's going on. So I don't freak out or lose confidence, even if my slides don't work. I know exactly what's important to my organization and how I fit into that. My good work is nearly always noticed and acknowledged. I never take it personally when my team, partner, client doesn't do what they're supposed to. I have a clear method for course correcting when things don't go according to plan, which again, 90%. So there are another 6. So if you haven't screenshot these, do it now. And I'm going to the next. I know exactly where to focus my time to excel in my current role or to get my next one, right? To get my next promotion. I know what skills to demonstrate and to whom in order to grow my influence. By the way, it's often not your boss, in case that's what you think it is. But let's keep going. I understand my roadblocks and triggers and already have them handled. You're just not triggered. I have a process for identifying and tackling my own blind spots. I have a written strategic plan for my career that informs my monthly, weekly, and daily actions. And nearly all of my career and leadership decisions and actions are intentional and strategic. And by the way, inaction is a decision. It's not a strategy. Rarely is it a strategy. Okay. So how are you guys doing? How many, when you look back at the scores you gave yourself, and I'll go back just a moment. Oh my God, I just lost you guys. Are you still there? Drop me a quick note and let me know you're still there, because I think I just lost you guys on the screen for a second, but hopefully we're back and everybody can see me where you're supposed to see me. So let me bring the slides back up. Okay, thank you. You still see me. Good, good, good. Hold on, let me bring the slide back up. So sorry, you guys, I pressed the wrong button and I totally left you guys alone. You're here. Thank you. That was weird. I didn't know if I'd be able to get back in. What I wanted to do was simply go back here. So let me go back so that you can see those first 6. So on how many of these are you at 7 or above, right? On how many of these are you at 7 or above? So that was the first screen. Again, screenshot it. And this is the second screen. Go ahead and screenshot that. How many of these are you 7 or above? And thank you guys for letting me know that you can see me and that you're here after my little blip there. So hopefully it didn't, break things down. But how many did you get 7 or above? And you don't have to share it in the chat if you don't want to, but definitely feel free. And if there's several where you didn't get 7 or above, how do you know and how will you know where to start? So again, this is the framework I recommend. Anything relating to self-mastery, I'd recommend you start there. Anything relating to self-mastery, I'd recommend you start there. And as I said at the beginning, I know for a lot of you, you're going to take what I shared and you're going to start to apply it immediately, and you're going to run with it on your own. For others of you, you're going to apply it immediately, but you already know that you want some partnership on this kind of path to 10, which is what I'm calling it. You might not want a 10, you might want a 9 or an 8 or just a 7 on everything, either way. But you already know that you want that support, that partnership, that structure, more to get there faster. In that case, I definitely want to invite you to schedule a consultation or a strategy session with me. If you're interested in doing this, I would do it quickly because there are not a whole lot of slots in there, but absolutely do go ahead and get yourself scheduled. bridgewellpro.com/consult. And I'll tell you what we're doing on the consult, just so you understand. And then I want to hear your key takeaways. So the consultation isn't a free coaching session, right? That's not what it is. What the consultation is an opportunity to dig deep into the primary problem or concern that you're seeing, to understand kind of what might be getting in the way and distinguish immediate next steps. And then if I think, and I'm pretty certain that my program can help you get there faster, because it's a 3-month program, and you guys can hear all about that later, but I will invite you to join. So over 3 months, you actually continue to track higher on all of those in a group program. And it is just, I'm always amazed at the kind of impact and differences that we see. So for example, there's one client that she's absolutely fantastic, has an amazing background, and I'm keeping it anonymous, but I just want to tell you a little bit about her results. What she did was she was focusing on her boss, right? She was focusing on trying to do a good job, have her boss notice that she was doing a good job. I know that resonated with a lot of you, so you guys get what I'm talking about. So what she would do is she would go ahead and propose opportunities to do more work, different work, kind of escalate what the team was doing, change methods of doing things to improve them. And literally, it was like the violinist in the subway station, right? This, like, the boss just didn't know what she had in this leader. And I recommended that she stop doing that immediately, and that all of that attention and extra effort, extra focus go instead to distinguish what she wanted to do next, what kind of environment that looked like, and then to start attending information sessions, networking events, things like that, and scheduling appointments. She immediately, like, she jumped on it. She immediately shifted, started going to networking events, stopped the extra angsting about work during the working hours and beyond the working hours. And I literally think within a month of going to networking events, she'd already scheduled several informational interviews. But more importantly, out of one of those interviews, she actually ended up being offered a job, then moved to the opposite coast, got the management consulting job that she wanted, and is making substantially more than she was making in the last miserable role. But see, had she been trying to satisfy the last miserable role because all she wanted was to get the gold sticker from that boss, all of that possibility, all of that opportunity, all of that growth would have been lost. So, that was fantastic. And that was just one shift. That was one shift. And now, of course, right, as she continues to move up the ladder, there are other challenges that we address. But I want to point that out because that sounds like it applied to several people here. If you were focusing your attention where it really belongs, what kind of results would you have? So, and on that note, I actually want to hear from you. What are your key takeaways from today's conversation? How do you see this applying to you? What are your key takeaways from today's conversation? And how do you see that applying to you? Right? Because the transformation doesn't live in the knowing, you guys. The transformation lives in the doing, which means you need to actually put this into action. So drop in the chat, how are you putting this into action? How are you putting this into action? And feel free to also drop questions into the chat because it's 1:00. I'm going to answer any questions as long as you guys want to stay here. So thank you so much. Thank you, Randy. I'm so glad that you enjoyed this session. So how are you applying this? And that goes to you too, Randy. How are you applying this? And for those of you who already know, I want you to grab your device, open up your calendar, and add the action to your calendar because you already saw the impact of saying you're going to do something, but not setting a date. So go ahead and let us know. What is that next action? What is your key takeaway? How are you going to put this into action and make it work for you? So I know there's a delay, and I think it's even more since I clicked off, but so pardon me if I'm not seeing your questions yet, you guys. I know they're going to be coming through. Somebody made a comment about imposter syndrome. So while I'm waiting to see the chat update, I actually want to address that if that's okay with you guys. I want to invite you for your consideration to consider that nothing has gone wrong. Now, I recently wrote something for Forbes, and you guys can find it somewhere, and they shared little tidbits from a whole bunch of different coaches, and mine was one that was shared. But what I want to invite you to do is shift how you think about imposter syndrome. When we hear the word syndrome, it means something has gone wrong. And I know a lot of people will disagree with me, but I'm not so sure anything has gone wrong. That's why I refer to it as the imposter experience, not imposter syndrome. See, the imposter experience kind of is, if you think about it, it's to be expected. It's to be expected from the environment we live in today, where unfortunately, we often place more credence on the shiny surface than the depth, right? It might be the shiny purpose versus then surface rather than the depth. So I want you guys to really think about that. Is it any wonder that you feel like an imposter and you're faking it when you are comparing your real life, your reality, to people's sound bites and glossy magazine cover without noting anything about what's actually inside. So an imposter experience is to be expected. So don't assume anything has gone wrong. And I just saw April's no email address not working. Sorry, April, I'm not sure I understand. What do you mean? That's a URL. You can go to bridgewellpro.com/consult. Let me actually bring that up there. And I'm also going to go ahead and type it here and see if it is clickable for you guys, just in case something weird happened there. Okay, let me see. Hopefully this is clickable. If not, you guys can see where to go there. Oh. It doesn't look like it's clickable, but you guys can see that in the chat. Okay, excellent. So I don't see your questions. So if we don't have questions, I am going to wrap it up. I will answer a couple of questions that you guys haven't asked, and that is this framework that I recommend. It works no matter what your level. It works no matter what your title. It works no matter what your industry is. It simply works. And every group program, and is that the case? Yes, that's the case now. I have physicians, I have researchers, I've had executive assistants in there. I've had executive directors of nonprofits in there. I've had project managers. I've had authors. I've had people of every type of background, and there is not an industry or level. I've had board members in there. There is simply not a level that this doesn't apply to. It is tried and true, and it works very effectively and rapidly. And you continue to, of course, to apply this. So please feel free to ask if you have any questions, but I wanted to let you know that in the event there's a question that I'm not high enough, or I'm too high, on the totem pole for this to work. Neither of those are accurate. The only requirement, I will tell you who this is not for, you need to have at least 10 years of professional work experience. You need to have been working as a professional for over 10 years. So that is the only requirement. Otherwise, it might not yield as satisfying results for you. That is one. And the other one is you need to be willing to kind of start with where you are and consider that the only kind of consistent factor in all your various environments are you. So it makes the most sense to focus on you and what you control, as opposed to showing up wanting to blame other people. We do that anyway, right? Through the coaching, because we can understand where other people are making decisions that aren't effective. But focusing on the person who's not in the coaching doesn't make sense. Focusing on how this person right here is going to address things not going according to plan is where the gold lives. So I think that is it. Let me see if I missed anything, you guys. Okay, and Ida, I see that. I decided to move to self-mastery level and didn't know that. Okay. Yes, and it can be challenging to distinguish where we fit when things aren't going, where our own thought errors are actually exacerbating the problem versus solving it, right? It can be a challenge, but it's not a challenge that's insurmountable. In fact, I maintain that the more uncomfortable you are considering that you might be the solution, both the problem and the solution, or part of the problem and the solution, then you're probably going to see the biggest gains. That is just one of those interesting things when you don't recognize that you're the problem quite yet. And I say part of the problem because, for example, the violinist, I'm going back to this because it is a simple low stakes example. The violinist, concert violinist playing in the subway, right? There really wasn't a problem, except that he wasn't getting acknowledged for his value. So he got to decide he was going to play there in spite of that being the reality. Now, the problem would be if he didn't want to acknowledge that that was the reality and continue to believe that that was the only place and environment where he could play. And that's what I want to offer up to you. If you're in a place where you feel like the violinist in the subway station or the apple in the orange orchard, right? And you're simply, people can't see what you bring, that's where you need to distinguish where just maybe, is it possible that it's been long overdue time for you to be in a different environment? So I'll stop with that. I think we're all set. I don't see any additional questions. And I think we're good. You guys, this has been so great. We're only 10 minutes over, which is almost like a record for me. So I've loved being with you. If we're not already connected, connect with me here on LinkedIn. Let me know you saw the webinar. If you schedule the consult, it'll ask you to have watched a video. Just type in the word webinar and say, hey, I was on the webinar, and I'll know that that's where this is coming from. But I've loved being with you. I can't wait to meet with you one-on-one. Right now, if you go to your email, it's already waiting for you. Well, you'll have the link to schedule the consult, right? You'll have a link to schedule the consult with me. And also information on the program that I mentioned, the group program and options there. So thank you so much. Definitely make sure you've subscribed and come on out next time. I try to do a free event every month. So make sure you're subscribed so that you get notified when I do the next free leadership event. Thank you so much. Oh, I love this. So Michelle, the self-assessment is the first on my list to work through. Excellent. Excellent. You guys take that assessment with you. Spend some time on it and distinguish what would look different, what could be different if you really were at an 8 or 9 or 10 on all of those factors. How would life look different? How would your relationship with your teams look different? How would your results look different? Anyway, you guys get it. It's life-changing. So I cannot wait to meet with you guys one-on-one, and I will see you next month. Bye.